On today's episode of This Week in Space, Tariq and I speak to astronomer Joe Rao about the upcoming annular eclipse in October and 2024's total solar eclipse. Don't miss it. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 83, recorded on October 13th, 2023. A hole in the sky. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide rely on Melissa for full spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records clean for free at melissa.com/twit. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the There's a Hole in the Sky edition. I'm here today with the incogitable Tariq Malik, editor-in-chief at space.com, who has sadly found himself a pair of Eclipse glasses for those watching the video stream. Isn't he just adorable, Ant? Oh, he took them off now. Okay, well, that's better. It is our good fortune today to be here to discuss our favorite natural phenomena, solar eclipses, with Joe Rao, meteorologist, astronomer, and sky columnist with space.com and others. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, Rod. By the way, you can pronounce it as if there was a Y between the A and the O.
Rao.
No, Ray. I'm your, let's put it another way.
Rao.
Today, I'm your Rayo of sunshine.
Oh,
I love it.
Clever.
I love it.
Tariq, we just had the one clever moment for the day. Yes, thank you, Ant. Given that you and I are both wiped out from the conference we did this week. So there we are. Speaking of a wipeout, guess what?
Well, what?
I have what? I have a space
I'm sorry. What?
From,
I don't know what you want me to guess.
from loyal listener and old pal Martin Lawler, one of the original space hipsters. Okay. Hey, Tariq.
Yes, Rod.
Oh, geez. What did the janitor say when he looked at the sample from Bennu?
Well, I don't know. What did the janitor? Why is a janitor looking at an asteroid sample in the first place? But what? What did he say?
I'm thrilled to see this Bennu sample. I can't wait to see what it looks like after I get done sweeping away all that black dirt and rock.
Oh no.
Everybody looks away. Okay. Well, Martin, this bud's for you. All right. As always, we invite you to join us to send your best or worst space joke. That may have been a case of the latter. We're counting on you. And also, don't forget to do us a solid and like, subscribe, and other podcast goodies. Now,
Yes.
on to headlines with the tired Tariq Malik. Tariq just got back to the East Coast from a whirlwind 3-day victory tour through Los Angeles, where we attended the Economist magazine's Space Economy Summit.
That was a lot of fun.
And we had a lot of fun, and we crushed it on the SS Twist, otherwise known as my old boat. And Tariq got back at 2 a.m, and he's yawning.
2 a.m. today, as we're recording it, not like any other time, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, Tuesday went to JPL. Wednesday had the Economy Summit. We recorded all sorts of fun stuff for the podcast on Thursday, and I am back here and with my cup of coffee, ready to talk solar eclipses in after headlines with Joe.
Well, okay, so headlines.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on me. What am I saying?
Yeah, I was kind of, we're gonna lead into it.
Psyche's on its way. Falcon Heavy finally made its liftoff, and
right.
we have our first spacecraft to a heavy metal asteroid. When are we going to get there?
That's right. Well, this was a really fun one to watch, because every time you see a Falcon Heavy launch, that means you get to see 2 rockets come back at least. Right. And this one was weird because the 2 side boosters, they landed at like really different times. But NASA's Psyche mission launched on this Falcon Heavy today from the Kennedy Space Center. Our own Josh Dinner was there. He said it was amazing, and it will arrive at this super metal asteroid in 2029 to get like an up close look at what they think is kind of like a not like a failed planet, but like the core of what could have been a planet if it had gotten any bigger over time. And there's some estimates because like space miners, who we kind of heard about at the Economy Summit, are really excited about, because they said that there's enough metal in this asteroid that it could be something like 100 quadrillion, however many dollars that is, worth of stuff in iron alone, let alone like the other stuff that is like there's a metal called monal. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Yeah,
I think it's monal.
That's like nickel and some other stuff there too. But this is a really interesting mission, and it's had a rocky road, as I know that you're aware, where they had to kind of push it back, and they had some software and some kind of early issues. And it's nice that they were able to get through all of that and then get off the ground, and now they're off and running. NASA is calling it their asteroid autumn, as we had the Bennu samples return to Earth from OSIRIS-REx. Now we have this, and then Lucy, the spacecraft, which is already out there, is going to make its first kind of flyby in November. So pretty fun success. Good luck to the Psyche team, to Lindy, who visited us on the podcast in the past, and her science teams that are really looking forward to all this fun stuff.
And we should note that all of today's headlines come, of course, from space.com.
Yes.
Now, here's a Flashback Friday special. The leaking Nauka module on the International Space Station. So once again, the ISS has a leak to the vacuum of space, and once again, be nice about it, Rod, but yet once again, it's in the Russian, one of the Russian components. And I think they have a bit of a quality control issue. I mean, I don't know where this one came from. You probably do.
Well, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, this was a coolant leak in one of the radiators on the Nauka research module of the Russian segment, and it popped up earlier in the week. Actually, I think on Monday is what, if memory serves, because I was scrolling after dinner and I was like, oh my gosh, like not another one.
Well, because this just happened with the Progress, right? Not the Progress, the Soyuz. That's
right. It happened with the Soyuz, and then there was a actual Soyuz pressure leak with like a tiny little hole in a previous one. So this is the third leak, of a Russian spacecraft or spacecraft component, in at least as many years. And so what, they said that there was never any problem, with, or issue with the Nauka module itself. The astronauts were never in any danger, right. But you don't want your cooling systems leaking coolant, over time. I think this is ammonia coolant, right? And they don't like swimming in that stuff on the space station. So they'll have to go look at it. There were 2 spacewalks scheduled over the next couple of weeks by NASA. Those have been postponed and rescheduled to later in the month after an impromptu Russian cosmonaut spacewalk to go out and look at this radiator, see if they have to repair it. Maybe they don't. They can just kind of reroute the coolant around it or whatever. We're going to find that stuff out, but it isn't it isn't a good look. It's one of the newest modules on the space station. Nauka is. There's I think a couple more after it, and maybe they were hit by micrometeorite debris. That's always possible. We've seen in the past.
Yeah, but if that's truly the case, as they have claimed over and over again, any Russian component must be a micrometeorite magnet, because they just don't seem to do a lot of damage to NASA's pieces of hardware.
There is that.
We give them the benefit of the doubt. I just want to add, if you ever drove a Yugo, which was a Soviet bloc automobile from the 80s, as I recall, it explains a lot about what goes wrong in space with Russian hardware, because it was possibly the worst designed machine in the history of humanity, which includes the original square wheel. All right. Finally, and hold your pearls, because this may come as a shock to many of you, Boeing Starliner is delayed again.
The devil, you say, Rod? No.
Oh my goodness.
This happened actually yesterday during the conference. I was in traveling, so I actually I'm trying to catch up now too. Yeah. But I mean, it was in early 2024. It was now they're saying it's no earlier than mid-April. I think it was January before that.
Look at that in that article we're scrolling in the background. They have a nice computer rendering of what Starliner looks like. Oh no, that's real, isn't it?
No, that's real.
That's test flight.
That was the uncrewed test flight.
Because it actually did get there once. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So so the first crewed flight now they're saying is no earlier than mid 2024, but the first like operational flight after that crewed test flight is in early 2025, which is a long time to go between those flights, right?
Indeed.
So because I think after the first crewed test of Dragon, which was in summer of 2020 in May, the first operational flight was that fall, right? Isn't that it was only like a few months later. So this is like nigh on a year, but I don't know. There's the issues with the Starliner that they found after the test flight, the uncrewed test flight, were substantial. They had the parachute cord issues that they had to figure out because they weren't rated for the actual full weight of an operational Starliner vehicle. Again, that boggles my mind that you would test. That you would test.
Wait, it weighs how much, Fred? You didn't tell me that. Yeah.
So, and then of course they had that flammable tape that was pervasive throughout the inside of the capsule. Again, it just boggles the mind how that.
Well, it does, because there's you can only imagine this moment where some tech says, "Oh, they forgot to wrap these wires. Hey, I have some old matchbook covers. I'll just wrap those around the thing," or whatever it is. I mean, how do you do that on some? Yeah, and they've been doing this. SpaceX has only been doing space since 2002.
Yeah.
Boeing has been doing space since the 1950s.
Yeah.
In one way or another. I mean,
I don't have an explanation.
Be an apologist. Come on.
I want Boeing and Starliner to succeed. Just like, we've seen with SpaceX and Dragon. It just seems like each time they find like a new thing that seems like it should have been caught in the early design phase or early testing phase. Testing for this vehicle has been kind of an Achilles heel because there is not like the issues with the first test flight that, didn't reach the proper orbit, the first uncrewed test flight, because they didn't have end-to-end flight software testing. They just tested little bits of it. And instead of doing the whole thing all at once, and then there was
it's okay, we're ready to launch. I got everything done except page 80. It'll be okay.
And then you find out after this test flight that, oh no, like the loads on the parachutes are higher than what they're allowed to be. Because it needs to have a 2 parachute capability, and right now the loads with the design they had were not. So they're redesigning all that stuff. So I mean, I think that, hey, maybe it might be like the space shuttle, where they had after the Columbia accident better and better inspection techniques, to the point that by STS-135, about 20 plus missions after Columbia. Those were like the cleanest, smoothest inspections that they had ever run, right? They got better as they did it over time. And I think that they'll get there with Starliner. But the future of Starliner beyond the space station, which I'll remind you has 7 years left.
Right.
The future of Starliner, I'm wondering, are they going to have the business case and the rationale, for all these commercial space stations that are coming up? Are they going to want to be using it for that? Or are they just going to want to fly out the NASA contract and then be done with it? So we'll have to wait and see. There's a really good Ars Technica piece that folks should look up. I think it's by Stephen Clark. But that's all about that people should go check out. It's a really, really good read.
Well, there's been a lot of conversation in the community about them flying out beyond the contract or not. Let's remind ourselves that Boeing is a publicly owned, shareholder-controlled company, unlike SpaceX, which can do pretty much whatever it wants. So we'll see how that goes. Well, very good. So we are down through headlines, and it is time now to take a moment to hear from our good friends who do not have technical difficulties getting their mission accomplished at Melissa. Because this episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Melissa, the data quality experts. For 38 years, Melissa has helped companies harness the value of their customer data to drive insight, maintain data quality, and support global intelligence. Over time, like spacecraft wiring, all data goes bad up to 25% per year. Having clean, verified data helps customers to have a smooth, error-free purchase experience. Bad data is bad business and costs an average of $9 million each year. Flexible to fit into any business model, Melissa verifies addresses from more than 240 countries to ensure only valid billing and shipping addresses enter your system. Melissa's international address validation cleans and corrects street addresses worldwide. Chinese, Japanese, and Cyrillic are just a few of the writing systems that Melissa's global address verification supports. Addresses automatically transliterate from one system to another, so you don't have to do that yourself, which is no fun. You can focus your spending where it matters. Melissa offers free trials and sample codes, flexible pricing, an ROI guarantee, unlimited technical support to customers all around the world. You can download their free Melissa Lookups app from Google Play or the Apple Store. No sign-up is required. We like that. You can validate an address and personally identify anyone in U.S. or Canada. You can check global phone numbers to find caller, carrier, and geographical information. And you can check global IP address information and more. Once you're signed up with Melissa, it's easy to integrate their other services, such as Melissa Identity Verification. You can increase compliance, reduce fraud, and improve onboarding. And Melissa Enrich, you can gain insight into who and where your customers are. Melissa specializes in global intelligence solutions and undergoes independent third-party security audits. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant, so you know your data is in the best hands. So make sure your customer contact data is up to date. You can get started today with 1,000 records clean for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And Twit is our boss. All right. Speaking of our boss, we are back to talk to the original boss of the sky.
The sun. Yeah.
Joe. How are you, Joe?
Well, I'm doing just fine. Enjoying the show so far, and sure I'll be enjoying a lot more in the minutes to come.
Well,
usually we have more sleep before a show. So
hey, speak for yourself. All right, so we're here today to talk primarily about this upcoming eclipse. We've got one tomorrow and then one coming up in 2024. So, Joe, just the primer, can you tell us a little bit about what an annular eclipse is, what makes them unique, and why they're pretty rare?
Well, as you know, the moon in its orbit around the Earth does not go around in a perfect circle. It goes around in an ellipse. At one end of the elliptical orbit, the moon is quite close to the Earth, 221,000 miles away. But on the opposite end, at what we call apogee, the moon is much further, about 13% further away at about 252,000 miles. It reached that point just a few days ago. And so now, as we get into that alignment of the sun, moon, and Earth to produce a solar eclipse on Saturday, unfortunately, the moon is going to be just a little bit too far out in space to cover the sun completely. I call it the penny on nickel effect. Imagine the nickel being the sun and the penny being the moon. No matter what you do, no matter what you try to do, you cannot cover that nickel with the penny. The best you can do is when you line them up exactly, you'll have a ring of nickel around that penny, and that's exactly what will happen with the eclipse on Saturday. The moon, when it's perfectly aligned with the sun, there'll still be a ring of sunlight, which is called an annulus, which is Latin for ring-shaped. You know, I wish I had $1 for every newscaster this past week who referred to it as an annual eclipse, as if it was every year. No, annual means, yearly, but this is an annular eclipse. It is a ring eclipse, and that's basically what you're going to see if you're in a very specific path which runs down across the western and southern United States from Oregon down to southern Texas.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, Rod. So for Rod and Joe,
hey, whoever.
Man, I need more coffee.
Hey, Aunt.
So Joe, you mentioned Saturday. That's October 14th for folks who are listening, because today is October 13th. It's Friday the 13th. That makes it even spookier that the sun is going to get blocked by the moon.
I'll tell you what. I wish the eclipse were on Friday the 13th, because as I speak to you now, here in the New York area where I'm located, I think you are too, Tariq. It's beautiful. We have blue sky, brilliant sunshine. It would be a perfect day to watch an eclipse. But unfortunately, the eclipse is on the 14th of October, and tomorrow the weather forecasts are for an 80% chance of rain. So I don't think I'm going to be seeing anything of the eclipse tomorrow, and neither will you and anybody else in the Northeast probably.
Now, for folks that maybe are learning either about it for the first time or are thinking about going out and they've been planning their trip, but they don't know where to go see. You mentioned that it's going to start in Oregon and run through I think Texas. So that's like what, about 4 or 5 states? It sounds like it's going to cross Nevada.
It's going to be like 9 states actually.
Oh, 9 states. Okay.
Because there are a couple of states where eclipse, the extreme, let's say northwest corner of a specific state, but it does touch a state. So, I think Nevada is one of those states where it just barely touch. But yeah, so about 9 states are going to be in the path of the annular solar eclipse. And
if I'm an observer, this is different, right? That I should be prepared to wear some special equipment, because a total solar eclipse, the moon darkens the sun, it gets dark. You can see that without wearing any kind of special glasses. But you just said that part of the sun is going to be shining out around the edge of the moon the entire time. So I don't think I'd want to stare at the sun without. I've got some of these these glasses here, but why are these important here?
You look very fashionable with those.
Because they're so good looking. I was going to say, yuck.
Can I tell a quick story about an annular or ring eclipse versus a total eclipse?
I think that would really help put it in perspective to our listeners.
In 2006, I flew to see a total eclipse in Turkey. I've traveled to 13 total eclipses. I don't really do annular eclipses. Like a lot of people have asked me, says, well, how come you're in New York? How come you're not in Texas or in Oregon or all that? Because I don't do annular eclipses. And here's the story. So I'm flying to Turkey from London, England. I flew from New York to London, then London to Turkey. So I'm on this flight, this L1011 jet with 360 eclipse viewers, people who are flying on down to Turkey to see the eclipse. I'm sitting there and I'm wearing my very fashionable eclipse hat.
Oh, I love it.
I heard it before I saw it. Wow.
There you go. And it has badges, and all the eclipses that I have seen over the years are on this particular cap. So I'm sitting there reading something, and all of a sudden one of the people on the plane, and most of them were from the UK, from Great Britain. Gentleman comes up to me and he says, "Excuse me, mate." By the way, they do talk like that. They have, "Excuse me, mate." I said, "Yes, what would you?" He said, "I see you've seen your fair share of eclipses." And I said, "Yes, I have." He said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "Back in October," this was in March, by the way, "back in October, I was in Madrid and I saw the Ring of Fire eclipse, the exact type of eclipse that's going to happen tomorrow." Mm-hmm. They call it a ring of fire because, again, there's a ring of sunlight that shines around the silhouette of the moon at the peak of the eclipse. He said, "I was in Madrid and I saw the Ring of Fire eclipse." He said, "Now, what we're going to see tomorrow," and again, we're all traveling to Turkey to see a total eclipse of the sun. Mm-hmm. But he's asking me, he says, "Now, what we're going to see tomorrow, will it be as good as what I saw in Madrid last October?" And I looked at the guy and I laughed in his face. I said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." He said, "What you saw last October, forget about it. This is the big show coming our way tomorrow." And he looked at me kind of quizzically and he said, "Really?" He said, "Well, I thought the Ring of Fire last October was really a spectacular sight, a ripping good show." And I said, "Look," I said, "are you on this flight, the return flight to London?" He says, "Yes." He said, "Well, tomorrow, after we all see the total eclipse, you come back here and you tell me what you thought about that compared to what you saw last October." And we flew down. We had a gorgeous view. Sun came in front of the moon. Total eclipse. We saw the corona. We saw the stars and planets coming out. We saw all around the horizon the beautiful saffron and orange colorations of sunrise and sunset. It only lasted for about 3.5 minutes. But my God, if you've ever seen a total eclipse of the sun or you've never seen one, it's nothing like what you've ever seen before in your life. Mm-hmm. So it just blew us all away. So we saw it. It was beautiful, perfect. And later that day, we got back on the flight going back to London. I'm sitting there by my lonesome, and all of a sudden my good friend comes along, and it's almost like he's coming sheepishly, like, and I said, "Oh, well," he said, "So, what'd you think of the eclipse today as compared to the ring of fire that you saw back in Madrid last October?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, the ring of fire was cute." There was no comparison. And he realized, after seeing his first total eclipse, he realized that an annular eclipse, for all good intentions, and it is an unusual sight, I will simply say that, but for all of how interesting it is nothing. It is nothing compared to a total eclipse of the sun. The real show comes our way next April, when the path of totality runs again from Texas. And believe it or not, there's a place in Texas near San Antonio that's going to be crisscrossed. They're going to see both eclipses. They'll see the one tomorrow, and 6 months from now, they're in the same track for the total eclipse. But it runs from Texas through the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley up to upstate New York and across northern New England. That is the big show, the total eclipse of the sun that's coming our way next spring.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Okay.
Well, now I feel a little bit weird, because I was like, oh wow, the big eclipse coming on Saturday. Let's tell everybody about it. And Joe's like, no, man, it's fine.
Well, if you've ever seen an annual eclipse, or annular eclipse as it should be, I've seen one and it was cool, but Joe's right. I mean, there's no comparison. An annular eclipse is, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of neat. It's a little darker. I can see.
You know what it is, Rod? An annular eclipse. It is a glorified partial eclipse.
Right.
Ooh.
It happens to be centered, but a total solar eclipse is a life-changing event.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I ask people, I said, have you ever seen a total eclipse of the sun? And they'll look at me. Now, if they say, I think I did way back when I was a kid, or I'm maybe I did. I'm pretty sure that I did it. They didn't see a total eclipse.
It's like asking somebody if they ever murdered someone but forgot about it. So before we go any further, and we got an ad break coming up here, but I just want to take a moment to tell people, no matter what you're going to see, whether it's annular, partial, you just feel like looking at the sun some afternoon, which isn't advised, or the incoming and outgoing phases of a total solar eclipse, you have to use the proper eye protection. We should all know that. But just so it's said, you can get eclipse glasses in a lot of places. Unfortunately, you also have to make sure you're getting safe ones. There's a lot of knockoffs coming out of primarily Asia. Some of them were sold on AliExpress and even Amazon. So you got to be careful and buy your glasses, your eclipse glasses. They're little cellophane things. They're not really glass, from a trusted vendor. Now, even big retail outlets can sometimes get the wool pulled over their eyes. So just be smart about it. I know that for this eclipse, they are selling viewing kits at Lowe's, Walmart, and I think Target, or one of the other major retailers. But
a lot of libraries are giving them away for free. And Joe, there's a big, NASA's giving thousands of these glasses for free. Just to follow up on that really quick, and Joe, if you've got some input to let us know. I mean, I spoke with the folks over at American Paper Optics, not to name drop a company, but they are like a trusted.
And by the way, we are going to put a list of these vendors in the show notes.
Manufacturer, but Joe, there's a certain kind of certification, right, that people need to look for to make sure their glasses are correct, because sunglasses aren't going to cut it to protect your eyes during a partial or an annular solar eclipse, or even a total solar eclipse in the beginning and the end phases of it. Correct?
There's I think an ISO number.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have like an ISO or stamp with a number on it, you might want to stay away from it, because they become certified.
I have like in my hand here, I have some paper ones that Rod was talking about, and I've got these kind of hard plastic, like more permanent ones you can use over again. And they both have these clear ISO. I don't know if I hold up for the camera
we can
for the
see
here.
it. Yeah, let's just remind people that anybody can print the letters ISO.
That's true.
That's true. So
it's true.
It's better, but not. And I have to give my annual warning. When I was a kid, my parents got me a little telescope. It had directions. None of us looked at them. It's a telescope. How hard can it be? It had a solar filter screwed onto the eyepiece, which was a little piece of welding glass. And this is 1964 or something. So people just didn't. Society wasn't as litigious as it is now. Let's say that. So I screwed that into the eyepiece, stared at the sun for a lot with my right eye. And by the time I was 50, I had serious cataracts because of that, to the extent that when I went in to get them fixed, the doctor takes one look and goes, "Hey, Annie, get the staff in here." And I had six people crowding around. Said, "Have you ever seen any cataracts as beautiful as these on a guy this young?" I'm sitting there like, hey, I'm right here, guys. You're talking eyes up here. But anyway, so long, expensive surgery later and permanent damage to my eyes. So welding glass doesn't do it. Smoke glass doesn't do it. Stacked sunglasses don't do it. You have to have materials that are specifically rated against the kind of UV frequencies the sun puts out.
Yeah.
And
you can't see through them like during the day.
However,
yeah.
Let me just add, and I'm sure Joe will talk about this. There are other ways to view solar eclipses. Yes. Partial solar eclipses. Pinholes, go under any tree that's got a lot of leaves on it, and you'll see 1,000 little pictures of eclipses because of the way the leaves refract the light. So let's talk about that. But first, let's take a break for our sponsors. So, Joe, in terms of people wanting to take a look at this from beginning to end, about how long does it last? And obviously, if you're off the path of totality you described through the Western states, you're just going to see a piece of this, right?
Yeah. Generally speaking, the partial eclipse, the entire eclipse from start to finish is going to last about 2.5 hours or thereabouts. And in the middle, of course, there's the peak or maximum of the eclipse. The Western United States, if you live, let's put it this way, if you live in the Pacific time zone and you're fortunate enough to have clear sky, you'll probably see at least 80% of the sun covered by the moon. In the mountain time zone, it could be like 60 to 80%. Central time zone, 40 to 60. And here in the East, probably will get something like 20, 30, 40% coverage. And it again, it's interesting when you have the proper viewing device. You mentioned, ways to look at it. The looking at the little images underneath a leafy tree are always interesting, especially if it's a breezy day, because then what you have is the eclipse seemingly twinkling, coming in and out and in and out or whatever. Really, really interesting there. I like to use the cracker method.
Cracker?
Cracker. Use a Ritz cracker or
like a saltine. Is that what you mean?
Cracker or whatever. Yeah, and it works. Those little holes in the cracker, you can use those holes to project tiny little images onto a sheet of cardboard or a piece of paper, and that's certainly interesting. You can use a straw hat.
For a minute, I thought you were going to use your cracker as a coronagraph, and I was going to say, I don't think that works.
What about a colander? Because those have holes in them too, right?
Well, and you can also use a hand mirror, believe it or not. And this is a fun way. You just take a mirror and you project the light of the sun. Don't look directly at the the sun, but you project the image of the sun, let's say 30, 40, 50 feet onto a screen, and lo and behold, there you have the image of the eclipse on that screen as well.
Wow.
As long as you talk about mirrors, I want to add, if you happen to be in the neighborhood of Griffith Observatory in LA, they have a device there called a triple beam coelostat, which is difficult to spell, but COELO stat or something. Anyway, it's the dome on the right as you're facing Griffith Observatory from the front. And it is a solar telescope that projects to a screen down inside the halls of science. Of course, it'll be crowded tomorrow, but it does give you a wonderful image of the sun that is probably about 3 feet across. If you're downstairs looking at the ground glass, it's a very cool way to see a partial eclipse.
It's always exciting when if you're in the path of totality and you're waiting and you're waiting. In fact, I'll tell you what, being in the path of totality is very much like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Because if you remember, late in the movie when they're all surrounding Devil's Tower, Wyoming, and waiting for the aliens to come, they're standing in there waiting, knowing that something is going to happen, that they're going to see it. And it's the same thing when you're in an area where a total eclipse is going to occur. All of these people have gathered like you, and you're waiting and you're waiting. And when you look up and you see that first little notch or bite taken out of the sun, you say, there it is! There it is! And the adrenaline starts to pump. And unlike if you're going to, let's say, if you're going to be executed, and you say, oh no, I don't want, in the case of a total eclipse of the sun, you say, come on, move faster, come on, moon, keep on moving, whatever like that. There's a whole bunch of emotions that go on when you're watching as the sun is getting whittled down slowly but surely from a bite to half a sun to a crescent. And then finally, in that final couple of minutes, my God, those couple of minutes, you don't know what to look at. Do you look off to the west and see the shadow approaching like a time lapse of a severe thunderstorm approaching you, which you have no control over? Do you look down on the ground and look for the ripples of shadow called shadow bands, which are caused probably by the fact that the atmosphere is very turbulent and the sun is now down to a thin filament of light? And it's the same reason why stars twinkle. The little beams of light that coming through the atmosphere cause the twinkling effect by that turbulent atmosphere. Now all of a sudden you're seeing these ripples of shadow on the ground. And now you're looking around and seeing as it gets darker, like somebody is turning a rheostat and a dimmer switch down. And now suddenly the planets are beginning to appear, the stars begin to appear. And then finally, when that diamond ring, the last little bit of sunlight disappears behind a crater or crevice on the moon, and all that's left is a little blob of sunlight. And now the inner corona comes out, and it literally looks like a diamond ring in the sky. I mean, the rule seems to be like, at the moment of totality, you scream your head off for about 20 years. And then after that, then you settle in and settle down and do whatever project you want to do, either photograph it or just look around or just look at that magnificent corona of the sun. Streamers, streaks of brightness through it, the prominences, the giant flares that are rising off of the sun's surface, those orange or crimson red hydrogen alpha flares around the edge of the sun. There's just so much that happens within just a couple of minutes. I mean, how much alien stimulation can the mind process in just a little over a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes?
No, that's
let me. Sorry, Tariq. I just want to add something real quick. For people who are not seasoned, either professional or amateur sky photographers, I would really encourage you to not get yourself tied up in knots taking pictures of the eclipse. I'm not saying that if you're a photographer, you shouldn't try it. It's great. I'm sure Ant can comment on that. But in terms of if you're seeing your first eclipse, and if you're my age, let's say, it may be your last eclipse, who knows? You want to just experience that moment in the privacy of your emotions. You don't want to be able to, same thing with rocket launches. I used to photograph rocket launches, and I realized after a couple of those, I hadn't experienced it. I had looked at it through a viewfinder and been worried about shutter speeds and composition and all that stuff, which is fine. But when you're doing this kind of once in a lifetime, very emotionally compelling experience, especially a total eclipse of the sun, you want to be there in person, not looking through a viewfinder.
I agree with you.
I hear our producer weighing in. I heard your springs.
Agreement. Yes, we love to get the shot, but dude, this is once in a lifetime experience. Let your own eyes see it, and take that memory in. Okay. Now
and it's funny how isn't it interesting how the difference between seeing it, just staring at it with your eyes versus looking at a viewfinder speaks to your heart in a whole different way. They're both interesting and compelling, but really just experiencing that moment with your hands at your sides is completely different for some reason.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually been dealing with that, not necessarily with space photography or anything like that, but this is my son's senior year, and I shoot photos for their team.
Yes.
And there's a lot of times I'm just standing there with the camera in my hands and not up to my face, because I want to capture this and hold on to this in my heart and in my eyes versus seeing it on the SD card. It's a big difference.
Because we all know when Ant sees a football flying through the air, the tears begin to flow. All right. It's very important. No, but it is. I mean, it's your kid. And it's my son was on the football team at his high school. And for the few moments that he was actually spending time on the field playing, as he keeps reminding me, he spent a lot of time warming the bench. It was a big deal. All right. Back to our normally scheduled question from Tariq. Sorry about that.
Well, no, I wanted to avoid any confusion because we've been bouncing back and forth fairly seamlessly between annular eclipse talk, total solar eclipse talk. And there is a total solar eclipse coming up on April 8th, 2024. So I just wanted to make sure that I kind of highlight that, because we've been talking a lot the last, I think 10 minutes about how great a total solar eclipse, and people aren't going to see that on October 14th. And I want to really make sure that we make that one clear. But Joe, I did want to ask, because how fast this specific eclipse might be. And you mentioned the path of annularity versus the path of totality, and I was curious if they're the same size, and does it matter if I live a mile outside the outer edge of a NASA map that says path of annularity? Does it matter if I go all the way to the center of that path, or am I good just getting in that little outer border so that I can see the ring of fire, or does where I go in that path determine how much of this ring of fire effect I'm going to see?
Generally speaking, the annular eclipse, if you are dead on center in the middle of that path, will run about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
And what will happen will be that when you get to the midpoint of that 5 minutes, let's say 2.5 minutes into the ring phase, the ring will look perfect all the way around. Now, if you are off center, let's say near the edge of the eclipse track, it won't last quite as long, and also the ring will be off center as well. And if you happen to be on the edge or even a little bit outside of the edge, what's going to be seen will be not necessarily a complete ring, but right around the edge near there'll be one side that'll appear exceptionally wide of the ring. The other side will be very, very thin, but that very thin side will appear to be broken up. Bailey's beads, as it's called, because of the rough terrain of the moon. You will see as the moon is sliding on by, you'll see mountains and valleys or whatever that are putting breaks in one edge of the ring, and they'll be appearing and disappearing and appearing and disappearing. In fact, I went to of the two annular eclipses that I've seen, the one that I went to in Arizona in 2012, I wasn't in the middle. I was literally right on the edge. And the reason is that all of us, those of us who were positioned there, wanted to see the Bailey's beads effect. And we did. For about 12 seconds, we saw these little beads of light on the thinnest edge of the ring. The other side of the ring was broader and fatter, if you will. But only for about 10 or 12 seconds we saw that, and then the moon continued to move away, and the ring changed back to what basically was a horseshoe with pointed tips.
Huh. That's really interesting, because it sounds like you can almost customize your eclipse experience by picking a location in a certain part of the shadow path. I hadn't even thought of that. I'll have to think about that for the next one. So,
all right, you gushing young men, we have to go to an ad break. But before we do, I just want to remind people, whether you're talking about this eclipse, the next one in 2024, or any event of this type, if you can't get to it to see it in person, or even if you can also check it out online at multiple places, including, drumroll please, bringspace.com. All right, we will be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Well, Joe, thanks for walking us through the October 14th annular solar eclipse. You mentioned a few times how much better the 2024 total solar eclipse will be, and that it's crossing over certain parts like San Antonio. A lot of people in in the San Antonio area get a chance to see two solar eclipses, but if folks miss this event, or if they take your advice and decide to put all of their travel plans into April's total solar eclipse. Walk us through that. So what should we expect? Where is that one going to be visible from? And when should people plan, or is it already too late to book a hotel for that?
You say booking a hotel. You may very well be right on that end, because
God, I haven't booked my hotel yet. Oh no!
And now you've said it, and everybody's rushing to their keyboard. We're done.
Not that you won't find any places that have no vacancy signs posted. The problem is that the hotels learn very quickly that there's going to be a major event coming, and all of a sudden, like for example, you want to go to Motel 6, you want to see them leave the light on for you. They might leave the light on. Normally, they may leave the light on for you for about $100 a night. But I can tell you right now that they find themselves in the path of totality. That $100 is going to go to maybe $500 or $700. I've even heard somebody told me the other day that there was a spot in the totality path, I think up near Cleveland, $1,000 a night. I mean, this is going to be the problem. And also another problem is going to be rent-a-cars. In 2017, actually I saw the eclipse from the air, but I did have to fly into Portland, Oregon, and wanted to do a little traveling for a few days around the time of the eclipse. And the rates for a rental car were off the wall. The rental car people too are going to grab you and say, "Oh yeah, you want a car?" and probably it's going to cost you like 2 to 3 times as much. So if you're just now saying to yourself, "Oh, I want to see the total eclipse in April," and you're planning to go reserve a room or get a rental car, you be prepared to spend, because there could be money. I've been telling people, I said, well, if it's too late, maybe what you ought to do is go to a spot maybe a couple hundred miles away from the totality path and rent your car there and then drive in the totality path. But even in that case, there may be problems, because in 2017, there were huge traffic jams leading into the total eclipse site. Those electronic signs that they have where they tell you about, delays to exit 34. There were signs that were flashing saying total eclipse of the sun, be prepared, long lines or long traffic. It's going to be crazy. There are 32 million people who live along the totality track in the United States next April. 32 million people. But I can tell you right now, we may double that for the numbers of people that are going to be trying to get into the totality path for the solar eclipse. I think next April, you say that the Thanksgiving weekend is the biggest, most traveled weekend of the year. I think that April 8th is going to challenge or the weekend before April 8th. If April 8th is a Monday, so the weekend before that's going to challenge Thanksgiving, because you're going to see people coming from all different directions trying to position themselves in the proper spot for viewing the total eclipse. It'll be kind of like a Brownian motion, like humans instead of
it's also spring break for some schools. Yeah. It's going to be spring break for us, so we're going to plan a trip to go see it. So I'm sure that's not going to help any.
So I think these warnings are valid, but I just want to remind folks, and we've talked about the 2017 eclipse a couple of times in the show, but I went to an Oregon location in Oregon that was darn near the center line, and we'd been reading headlines and hearing stories for months about eclipse apocalypse and all this stuff. So we had, my son and I and a friend had an SUV packed up with camping gear, spare food, water, everything but a porta potty. And as it turned out, in Prineville, Oregon, which was fairly close to center line, there was very little traffic. And while they had been gouging at those hotels too, we did some homework from the road with my son calling around, and a budget inn that had been going for, I think, $700 a night for very modest accommodations. A University of Washington had booked a whole floor full of rooms and then didn't come, canceled their booking, but had to give up the fee because they did it so late. So we were able to get rooms at rack rate. So I think that's a one-off. But just so it's said, we shouldn't discourage people from trying at least.
Yeah. Well, to the point. Oh, go ahead, Joe. There
was a hotel that I had made a reservation for in Pyle. By the way, I made reservations all along the eclipse track because, I'm going to make a decision this coming April as to where the best area based upon weather will be about a week before the eclipse. So I made like 4 or 5 reservations already at different hotels. I'll cancel the 4. And when I know that the best spot will be, let's say Indianapolis, I'll go there and I'll cancel all the other reservations. I made a reservation in 2017 in Payette, Idaho. And the young girl who took my reservations was very nice. And she said, all right. And I said, you're aware about the eclipse, right? Oh, there was going to be an eclipse. It was something like $90 a night. Very, very reasonable. And and she sent me the email, and I made a printout of the reservations. A couple of days later, I get a phone call from the manager of the hotel saying, the young lady you spoke with forgot to mention that we have a special eclipse rate going on. Oh. And it turned out that the actual rate was like 5 times the amount. Mm-hmm. And now he's telling me, so you're going to have to pay the $400. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, what do you mean, no, you're not? I said, your young lady sent me an email and I made a printout. I said, that to me is a contract between me and your hotel. I said, now you're telling me at the last minute now that you're changing the rate to 5 times as much. He said, I think that the contract, and I was looking at it, I said, I think the amount of money that you said I had to pay initially, the $90 or whatever plus stands. Mm-hmm. I said, and if you don't think that that's the case, maybe I ought to go to a lawyer and maybe we ought to talk about this in greater detail. And guess what? I got the $90 rate. And then at the end, I canceled because I ended up flying and seeing the eclipse from the air. But, this is some of the stuff that hotels are going to perhaps pull on you in advance of this eclipse coming up.
And to that point, I think maybe we might like kind of close with that. Rod mentioned earlier about making sure your solar eclipse glasses, even if they say they're ISO certified, are in fact the real deal. Just to take care in that there are a few companies you can research. We've got them on space.com if you're interested to use from. Joe, your experience was one that the Department of Commerce in the U.S. began to investigate in 2017, as early as the spring leading into that summer, because they saw a lot of cancellations and rebillings going into that. And I think there will be an increased watchful eye by the government after that. And they had also, the Department of Transportation had warned of the traffic from hell. And Rod, while you say you had this great experience and it wasn't that bad, our friend Leonard David was stuck with his wife for hours in Wyoming because it was a really rural area and it was really difficult to get into and out of. Yet I met people in Carbondale, Illinois, who got on the bus that morning, drove down, saw the eclipse, got on the bus and drove back that night, and that's a 5-hour ride for them from Chicago. So,
well, we might add, if you're planning your trip, try to find smaller communities that have 4 or 6 lane highways instead of 2. Maybe that's right.
That's right.
Because you get one car stalled in the 2-lane highway and your day is done.
So I'll close with one last question for you, Joe, and that is, you said you've seen 13, I think you said earlier, or more than a dozen total solar eclipses.
Yeah.
And so if people decide to skip the annular, or let's say they see it and they're like, I need more, where do you think the April 2024 eclipse is going to rate in terms of how great of an event it would be based on the eclipses that you've seen?
Oh, well, it'll be a bucket list event for most anyone. For the ones that I have seen, they're like snowflakes. No 2 eclipses are alike. Depending upon atmospheric conditions and depending upon the overall size of the shadow as it moves in and over you, whatever. I mean, I've seen some eclipses where 2 or 3 minutes before totality, it looked like a tidal wave of darkness approaching from the direction of the shadow. Other eclipses, I haven't seen that effect. Instead, it simply looked like, as I said before, somebody turning down a rheostat or a dimmer switch, and it just got dim and darker over time. And then after totality, it just brightens up again. But regardless of how it all looks, and be it you see totality for either 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 5 minutes, it's still going to be an amazing sight. And by the way, even if you're in a place where the totality lasts like 4.5 minutes, which will be the maximum for this one coming up in 2024, all total eclipses that you see last 8 seconds, because in your mind, it's like, it's over already. That wasn't 4 minutes. It was incredible. It's just an unbelievable event. I hope everybody takes advantage and sees it, because the next chance here in the contiguous United States to see a total solar eclipse will not come until 2044. So that's 20 years from now. So,
and you just said something like a minute ago that you watched an eclipse from the air. We've been talking about watching all these eclipses from the ground, but you can get on a plane and watch an eclipse that way too. That's an option people should think about.
I'm so crazy about eclipses that I've actually coerced 2 major airlines to change their itinerary. In 1990, there was one over the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I went to an airline that doesn't exist anymore, American Transair, and I said, if you delay the flight for about 40 minutes out of Hawaii en route to San Francisco, we'll be able to see a total eclipse of the sun on the way back to San Francisco. And they went for it. They actually did delay the flight for about 40 minutes. And then again, more recently in 2016 with Alaska Airlines, I told them again, you delay the flight for about a half an hour, your normal commercial flight from Anchorage, Alaska to Honolulu, you will encounter a total eclipse of the sun. That really worked for Alaska Airlines, because when they made it clear that they were going to do that a few days in advance, all kinds of news media started gravitating toward them. They even had ABC News come on board. Actually, the funny thing with ABC News, they went to Alaska Airlines and they said, we'd like to be on board that flight so that we can cover it and do it on the World News Tonight. And Alaska Airlines said, oh, darn it, the flight is totally booked. And they said, oh, all right, well, thanks a lot. No, wait, we can get a bigger plane. And they got a bigger plane to accommodate ABC News, and they covered it. So these are the crazy things that I've done in getting views of total eclipses, is actually having airline flights. I didn't exactly hijack the airline, but I did have them change their itinerary so that we all were able to look out and enjoy a total eclipse of the sun.
Rod, we should get our pilot's licenses so we can do it.
Oh God, no, let's not add that to the itinerary. Plus, you and me with our ADD. Hey, I'm flying the plane. Oh, look, a birdie. Wham. So everybody, thank you for joining us today for our first Hole in the Sky special with Joe Rao. Joe, where can we track your eclipse path online?
Well, you can go to my Facebook page, Joe Rao Weather, and Rao is spelled R-A-O, Joe Rao Weather on Facebook, and you'll find me there whenever we talk about eclipses or any other celestial sight. You'll find me talking about it on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at the same handle, Joe Rao Weather, and of course, Night Sky on space.com. I'm always writing at space.com, and in fact, if you go on space.com right now and you want to know what the local weather might be for the eclipse tomorrow, we just posted a national weather forecast online at space.com, so you can see whether or not you're in the cruddy zone of not seeing it, as will probably be the case here in New York, or whether or not your view will be unhindered by any kind of cloud cover.
Well, sensational. I promise by the next time we have you on for the 2024 eclipse, I'll have your pronunciation of your last name down pat. Tariq?
Well,
how about
you can find me on the Twitter at Tariq J. Malik, at space.com as well. And tomorrow, obviously, sitting here at my desk, orchestrating our solar eclipse coverage. We've got people in Nevada. We've got people in Chaco Canyon watching it. It's going to be really exciting. And watching all those live streams from NASA all the way down. If you're starts at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on NASA TV is the primary webcast to look out for, but there's a lot more that you can choose from different parts of the world. And then I'm going to sleep for like a week.
What time is totality in the different time zones?
So it starts at 9:15 Pacific time in Oregon is when the eclipse itself, I believe, begins. And then it peaks, I think, about a half an hour after that. So say like, yeah.
Okay. Can I say one final note before we part company here? And I think I'm offering to any library or civic group, I've been doing these talks on the upcoming eclipse. I have actually two of them. One that's called The Sun Will Darken on April the 8th, and another, Adventures of Eclipse Chaser, which talks about all of my crazy stuff that I've done in trying to chase down eclipses and events and things that I've experienced over time. They are done via Zoom. They are all virtual PowerPoint talks. They last for at least an hour, followed by a 15-minute Q&A from viewers either on the chat board, or they can unmute themselves and ask questions directly. And so if any library or civic group is interested in hosting my talk or talks, you can contact me directly at Joe Rao, JoeRao, weather @gmail.com. And I'll be very happy to send you my prospectus on the two different programs that I offer, and maybe we can make an arrangement. There is a fee for that. It's not for free or whatever. But if you're a library, or a civic group, and are interested in something interesting for your members or your patrons, by all means, contact me, and we'll see if we can make an arrangement.
Well, and by all means, to all the same people listening, do feel free to contact Joe, because Tariq will be headed for a nap, and I'll be standing outside enjoying the eclipse, not answering my phone during that entire time, although for free, I might add. So, of course, you can always find me at pylebooks.com and at astromagazine.com, but you know that already because I'm everywhere. That was arrogant, wasn't it? Please don't forget to drop us a line.
It's not arrogant if it's true, Rod. So I got like a whole bookshelf of Rod Pyle books over here. So
well, let it never be said that my shadow didn't loom large. Don't forget to drop us a line at twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, ideas, and eclipse critiques. And we answer every message, one of us. Don't forget also to check out space.com, the websites of the name, and the National Space Society, my benefactor. Both are good places to satisfy your space flight and astronomy and eclipse cravings. New episodes published every Friday of this, your favorite podcast, on your favorite podcatcher. So make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We'll take whatever we can get. But don't forget, you can get all the great programming on the TWiT network ad-free, and some bonus extras you won't get elsewhere. Some coming from us soon. Me and my partner here.
From the boat.
On Club TWiT. Only available there for just $7 a month, which is way cheaper than going to an eclipse. Finally, you can follow the TWiT Tech Podcast Network at TWiT on Twitter and on Facebook, and twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side of tomorrow's eclipse. Take care.
It's midweek, and you really want to know even more about the world of technology.
So you should check out Tech News Weekly, the show where we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news.
It's the biggest news. We talk with the people writing the stories that you're probably reading. We also talk between ourselves about the stories that are getting us even more excited about tech news this week.
So if you're excited, well, then join us. Head to twit.tv/TNW to subscribe.